My name is Ralph. I'm 28 years old and I never thought I'd have to call the police on my own sister. I built my software engineering career precisely to escape my family's drama, especially Amanda's entitled behavior. So when my phone rang at 3 a.m. in Singapore with security telling me someone was in my apartment, I felt my world collapse. The security footage showing my sister using a key my parents secretly duplicated was all I needed to see. Before I dive into how my own sister ended up in handcuffs because of my parents overstepping, let me know where you're watching from and hit that subscribe button if you've ever had to set tough boundaries with family. I grew up in a middle-class suburban neighborhood in Grand Rapids, Michigan. From the outside, we looked like the perfect American family. My father Thomas worked as an accountant at a local firm, while my mother Marilyn taught second grade at the elementary school just 3 blocks from our house. We had a modest 4-bedroom home with a small backyard, a golden retriever named Buddy, and even a white picket fence. But appearances can be deceiving. From my earliest memories, it was clear that my sister Amanda was the golden child. 2 years younger than me, she somehow managed to get away with everything. When we were kids, she would break my toys and claim I had done it. My parents always believed her. If I got an A on a test, my parents would nod and say, "Good job." When Amanda got a B-, they'd throw her a celebration dinner and put her work on the refrigerator. "Amanda just needs more encouragement," my mother would say whenever I pointed out the unfairness. "You're naturally gifted, Ralph. You don't need as much support." This pattern continued throughout our childhood. I learned early on that the only person I could truly rely on was myself. When Amanda wanted my things, my parents would insist I share. "Be generous with your sister," they'd say. But generosity was never a two-way street in our household. By high school, I had developed a strategy for survival: academically, spend as much time as possible at extracurricular activities, and save every dollar I earned from my part-time job at the local electronics store. My plan was simple: get a scholarship to a university far away from Michigan. My hard work paid off when I received a full scholarship to MIT. The day my acceptance letter arrived was the first time I saw genuine pride in my father's eyes, though it was quickly overshadowed when he said, "It's too bad Amanda isn't more like you academically." While I studied computer science and built connections in the tech industry, Amanda dropped out of community college after 1 semester. She moved back home where my parents continued to support her financially and emotionally. They paid her car insurance, covered her phone bill, and never asked her to contribute to household expenses. After graduating with honors, I received multiple job offers. I deliberately chose a position with a major tech company in Seattle, nearly 2,000 miles from my family. The distance was not accidental. I needed space to build my own life without the constant drain of family drama. In Seattle, I thrived. I worked my way up from junior developer to senior software engineer in just 4 years. I saved aggressively and eventually put a down payment on a luxury apartment in downtown Seattle with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Puget Sound. For the first time in my life, I had a space that was entirely mine, decorated exactly how I wanted, with no one to answer to but myself. I made friends with colleagues who respected my boundaries and valued my time. I dated casually, but was hesitant to get too serious with anyone, still working through the trust issues that stemmed from my childhood. My therapist helped me understand that my reluctance to let people get too close was directly related to having my boundaries constantly violated growing up. My relationship with my family remained complicated. I called my parents once a week out of obligation more than desire. They rarely asked about my work or life, instead filling the conversations with updates about Amanda's latest drama or their disappointment that I didn't visit more often. I limited my trips home to major holidays, and even then I stayed at a hotel rather than in my old bedroom. This decision always resulted in arguments, with my mother claiming I was too good for them now, and my father accusing me of wasting money to make a point. Amanda would occasionally text asking for money, which I initially provided, hoping to maintain some relationship with my only sibling. But after lending her $3,000 that was never repaid or acknowledged, I established a firm boundary: no more financial support. This boundary setting created even more tension. My parents called me selfish for not helping family, despite the fact that they continued to support Amanda financially well into her 20s, while I had been self-sufficient since 18. Family helps family, my father would lecture during our increasingly strained phone calls. What he really meant was that I should help Amanda while expecting nothing in return. Last spring, I received exciting news at work. Our company was expanding into the Asian market, and I was selected to travel to Singapore for 2 weeks to help establish our new office there. This was a significant opportunity that could lead to further advancement in my career. I meticulously prepared for my absence. I arranged for my mail to be held at the post office, set up automatic plant watering systems, and ensured my apartment was spotless before departure. I even had a conversation with the building security team, explicitly stating that no one would be visiting my apartment while I was away. If anyone attempts to enter my unit, please contact me immediately. I instructed the head of security, Martin, who assured me they would monitor closely. What I didn't know was that during my last visit home for Christmas, my mother had secretly made a copy of my spare apartment key. I had foolishly left my key ring on the kitchen counter while taking a shower. That small moment of trust would come back to haunt me in ways I never imagined. The opportunity to help establish our company's presence in Singapore was exactly the kind of career advancement I had been working toward. Our CEO had personally selected me based on my innovative work on our core software platform, and I was determined to exceed expectations. I arrived in Singapore after a 16-hour flight, jet-lagged but exhilarated. The humidity hit me like a wall as I exited Changi Airport, but the city's stunning skyline quickly diverted my attention. My company had arranged accommodations at a luxury hotel near our new office space, and I spent the first evening reviewing my presentation materials while fighting to stay awake until a reasonable local bedtime. The first week of meetings went exceptionally well. I connected with our new team members, most of whom were local tech experts with impressive resumes. My presentation on our product roadmap received enthusiastic feedback, and I was building strong relationships with key stakeholders. Each night, I returned to my hotel room exhausted but satisfied, feeling that this trip could be a turning point in my career. I maintained my routine of calling my parents once a week, briefly updating them about Singapore without sharing too many details. They seemed disinterested as usual, quickly turning the conversation to Amanda's latest job interview and how nervous she was about it. I congratulated her half-heartedly, knowing from experience that her employment situations rarely lasted more than a few months. "You should help her prepare," my mother suggested. "You're so good at interviews." I deflected, mentioning the 13-hour time difference and my packed schedule. The call ended with the familiar weight of unmet expectations pressing on my chest. It was during my 9th night in Singapore when everything changed. I had fallen asleep around 11 p.m. after a particularly productive day finalizing partnership agreements. At approximately 3:15 a.m. local time, my phone began vibrating intensely on the nightstand. Disoriented and groggy, I fumbled for it in the darkness. The screen showed a call from an unknown Seattle number. My first thought was that it must be an emergency at work, perhaps a server crisis that needed immediate attention despite the time difference. "Hello?" I answered, my voice thick with sleep. "Mr. Wilson, this is Martin from Building Security at the Cascade." The security guard's voice was tense, professional. "Our monitors detected movement in your apartment, and the alarm was temporarily disarmed using a key." I sat bolt upright, suddenly wide awake. "That's impossible. I'm in Singapore. No one should be in my apartment." "That's what our records indicated, sir. We have camera footage of someone entering approximately 20 minutes ago. A young woman. The system shows she used a key to enter." My mind raced. A young woman with a key. It didn't make sense. "Can you access the security feed and send it to me?" I asked, already reaching for my laptop. "Yes, sir. I'll send it to your registered email immediately." While waiting for the email, I paced my hotel room, adrenaline coursing through my veins. When the email arrived, I clicked on the video attachment with trembling fingers. The footage was clear, despite the hallway's dim night lighting. There was Amanda, my sister, casually using a key to unlock my door as if she had every right to be there. She looked around furtively, before entering, then quietly closed the door behind her. My stomach dropped. How did she get a key? I had never given her one. The realization hit me like a physical blow. My parents. They must have made a copy during my Christmas visit. Sir Martin's voice brought me back to the phone call. "Do you recognize this person?" "Yes," I said, my voice tight with anger. "It's my sister. But she should not have a key, and she does not have permission to be in my apartment. Would you like us to confront her?" I hesitated for just a moment. Family loyalty warred with the violation I felt seeing Amanda sneaking into my private space. "Yes, and if she refuses to leave, please call the police." "Understood, sir. We'll handle it immediately." After hanging up, I sat on the edge of the hotel bed, my head in my hands. My phone buzzed with a text message from Amanda. "Hey, brother, surprise. I'm in Seattle and thought I'd crash at your place for a few days. Your apartment is amazing. So much nicer than you described. Hope that's cool." The casual presumption in her message made my blood boil. She hadn't asked permission. She hadn't even told me she was coming. And based on past experience, a few days could easily turn into weeks. My phone rang again. It was Martin. "Mr. Wilson, we confronted the woman who identified herself as Amanda Wilson, your sister. She refused to leave, claiming she has permission to be there. She became belligerent when we insisted she exit the premises." "What's happening now?" I asked. "We've called the police as per your instruction. They should arrive within minutes." Another text from Amanda appeared. "Why are these security guys hassling me? Tell them it's fine that I'm here." I didn't respond to her text. Instead, I asked Martin, "Do you have cameras inside the apartment?" "Only in the entry hallway, sir. For privacy reasons." "Can you see if she's brought anything into the apartment or moved things around?" The hallway camera shows she brought in a large suitcase and what appears to be a small duffel bag. She's moved between rooms several times. Would you like me to stay on the line until police arrive?" "Yes, please," I said, calculating the potential damage. Amanda had access to my personal documents, my computer, my valuables. Given her history, I had every reason to be concerned. 20 minutes later, Martin informed me that police had arrived and were speaking with Amanda. I could hear her voice in the background rising in indignation. "They're explaining that without your permission, she is trespassing," Martin explained. "She's claiming that your parents gave her permission and provided the key." "That's absolutely false," I stated firmly. "I never authorized anyone to enter my apartment, and any key she has was made without my knowledge or consent." The next hour was surreal. I spoke briefly with a police officer who confirmed that without my explicit permission, Amanda was indeed trespassing. When I made it clear I wanted to press charges, they arrested her. The officer explained that in Washington state, entering a dwelling without permission could constitute residential burglary, a felony. The fact that she had used a key didn't matter if she didn't have authorization from the tenant. As Amanda was being escorted out in handcuffs, Martin described her screaming that I would regret this, that family doesn't do this to family. I felt sick, but resolute. This violation was the culmination of a lifetime of boundaries ignored. Within minutes, my parents started calling. I let the first 3 calls go to voicemail before finally answering. "Ralph Wilson, how could you?" My mother's voice was shrill with anger. "The police just called us. Amanda is being arrested because of you." And so began the most difficult confrontation of my life, taking place across thousands of miles and multiple time zones, with my career opportunity unfolding in Singapore while my personal life imploded back in Seattle. Mom Amanda broke into my apartment without permission. I explained, struggling to keep my voice steady. She had no right to be there. "She didn't break in," my mother shrieked. "She used a key. We gave it to her because we were worried about you." That confirmation of my suspicions sent a wave of betrayal washing over me. "You made a copy of my key without telling me. That's completely unacceptable." "Don't be so dramatic," my father's voice cut in. They had put me on speakerphone. "We're your parents. We have a right to access your place in case of emergencies." "No, you absolutely do not," I countered, pacing my hotel room. "I'm 28 years old. My home is private property. Making a copy of my key without permission is not only a violation of trust, it's potentially illegal." "Oh, please," my mother scoffed. "Amanda just needed a place to stay for a few days. She has a job interview in Seattle tomorrow. She was going to surprise you. I'm in Singapore for work. You both knew that. And Amanda could have stayed in a hotel like any other adult." With what money my father demanded. You know she's been struggling. There it was, the real reason. Amanda needed free accommodations and my parents had volunteered my home without consulting me. That's not my problem, I said firmly. And it doesn't justify invading my privacy. Privacy. She's your sister. My mother was crying now, using tears as she always did when logical arguments failed her. Family helps family. I need you to listen carefully, I said, my voice dropping to a dangerous calm. Amanda is being arrested because she refused to leave when asked by building security. That was her choice. I will not be dropping the charges. And when I return to Seattle, I will be changing my locks and reconsidering my relationship with all of you. My father's voice turned threatening. If you do this to your sister, don't expect us to ever forgive you. You've always been selfish, Ralph, but this is beyond the pale. The conversation deteriorated from there. My parents alternated between begging, threatening, and guilt-tripping. I remained firm, ending the call when it became clear no productive discussion was possible. Within an hour, my phone was flooded with messages from extended family members. Apparently, my parents had mobilized the entire family against me. Aunts, uncles, and cousins I barely spoke to were suddenly messaging me about family loyalty and how disappointed they were in my actions. My cousin Jack, the only family member I maintained a close relationship with, called next. Dude, what the hell is happening? Aunt Marilyn is telling everyone you had Amanda thrown in jail for visiting you. I explained the actual situation, relieved, when Jack responded with understanding. That's seriously messed up, he said. They had no right to copy your key, and Amanda should have left when security asked her to. Thank you for seeing it that way, I sighed, realizing how much I needed just one family member to validate my perspective. Look, Jack continued, I should tell you something. Amanda has been in financial trouble again. I overheard your parents talking at the last family dinner. She maxed out another credit card and needs money for rent. I think she might have been planning to take some of your stuff. This revelation, while shocking, made horrible sense. I asked Martin to check my apartment again via the security cameras. He confirmed that several drawers appeared to have been opened and my home office had been disturbed. The next day, while I was trying to focus on an important presentation, I received a call from my company's HR director in Seattle. Ralph, I'm sorry to bother you in Singapore, but there's a situation at the office. A woman claiming to be your mother and a man identifying as your father are in the lobby demanding to speak with you. They're quite agitated and causing a scene. I closed my eyes, mortified. I am so sorry. They should not be there. Please have security escort them out. I'll explain the situation when I return. They're saying it's a family emergency regarding your sister, the HR director continued. Is there something we should know? I had to briefly explain the situation, humiliated that my family drama was now spilling into my professional life. I understand, she said sympathetically. We'll handle it discreetly. Please focus on your work in Singapore. Everything here will be fine. But the damage to my reputation had begun. Later that day, I received an email from my direct supervisor in Seattle, asking if everything was all right, and if I needed to return early from the trip. I assured him I could complete my responsibilities despite the personal issues. That evening, I contacted a lawyer in Seattle seeking advice on my legal options. He confirmed that I had every right to press charges for trespassing and suggested I consider a restraining order given the escalating harassment. Your parents showing up at your workplace crosses another boundary, he explained. We can file for temporary orders of protection that would legally prevent them from contacting you or coming to your home or workplace. It was a drastic step, but I was beginning to realize that normal boundaries wouldn't work with my family. They simply didn't respect typical social contracts. My inbox contained another surprise, an email from Amanda's boyfriend, Troy, containing thinly veiled threats about what would happen if I didn't drop the charges. You think you're so much better than everyone with your fancy job and apartment, he wrote. But nobody treats Amanda this way. You'll regret this, I promise. I forwarded the email to my lawyer and the police department handling Amanda's case. 3 days after Amanda's arrest, she was released on bail, which my parents paid. According to Jack, who had become my primary source of family information, my parents had hired an expensive criminal defense attorney for her using their retirement savings. The weight of all this drama was affecting my performance in Singapore. During an important client dinner, I found myself struggling to focus on the conversation, my mind drifting back to Seattle and the chaos waiting for me there. "Are you all right, Ralph?" asked Sophia, our regional director. "You seem distracted." "Just jet lag," I lied, forcing a smile. That night I made a decision. I would not allow my family's toxic behavior to derail the life I had worked so hard to build. I emailed my lawyer with clear instructions to pursue all legal options to protect my privacy and safety, including restraining orders against my parents and sister if necessary. I also contacted a locksmith in Seattle to change my locks immediately, and I arranged for additional security measures to be installed at my apartment. The building management was fully cooperative, especially after the disruption Amanda had caused. With those practical matters handled, I turned my attention back to my work, determined to complete my Singapore assignment, successfully, despite the personal turmoil. But the knowledge that I would be returning to a legal battle with my own family cast a shadow over what should have been a career-defining moment. Upon returning to Seattle, I was immediately thrust into the legal consequences of Amanda's arrest. My lawyer, Michael Brennan, briefed me on the situation the morning after my arrival. "Amanda has been charged with criminal trespass in the first degree, which is a gross misdemeanor in Washington state," he explained as we sat in his downtown office. "However, given that she brought luggage and may have been planning a longer stay, plus the evidence that she went through your belongings, the prosecutor is considering adding burglary charges, which would be a felony." The gravity of the situation struck me. I hadn't intended to potentially saddle my sister with a felony record, but her actions and subsequent behavior had escalated what could have been a simple misunderstanding into a serious legal matter. "What are my options?" I asked, suddenly feeling the weight of my decision. "You could push for the maximum charges, which could result in jail time for Amanda if she's convicted. Or you could agree to a plea deal, which would likely involve probation, mandatory counseling, and a no-contact order." Michael leaned back in his chair. "Given that this is a family matter, the district attorney is open to diversion programs if you're amenable." 2 days later, I met with the district attorney, a stern woman named Catherine Rivera, who laid out the case against Amanda. "We have clear evidence of trespass," she said, reviewing the file. "The security footage, your explicit instructions to building management that no one had permission to enter, and your sister's refusal to leave when asked by authorized personnel. What complicates matters is the key. Since she didn't force entry, her attorney is arguing that she believed she had implicit permission to be there. She absolutely did not," I stated firmly. "I understand, but juries can be sympathetic in family cases. That said, we've uncovered some concerning information during the background check." She slid a document across the table. "Your sister has a history of petty theft charges and one pending case of credit card fraud in Michigan. This pattern suggests this wasn't just about finding a place to stay." I felt sick as I reviewed Amanda's criminal history. Small charges mostly dismissed or pleaded down, but forming a pattern I hadn't known about. My parents had kept this from me, while continuing to portray Amanda as simply struggling and in need of family support. Later that week, I received a call from my parents' lawyer, an aggressively confident man named Richard Goldstein. "Mr. Wilson, I'm representing your sister in this unfortunate misunderstanding. I'm calling to see if we can resolve this matter amicably within the family." "There was no misunderstanding," I replied. "Amanda entered my home without permission and refused to leave when asked. Your parents provided the key and gave permission," he countered smoothly. "Amanda had every reason to believe she was welcome. My parents had no authority to grant access to my private residence." "Perhaps not legally," he conceded, "but surely you can see how this created confusion. Amanda is facing serious charges that could impact her future employment prospects. As her brother, I'm sure you don't want that." His manipulation was transparent, but effective. I didn't want Amanda to have a felony record if it could be avoided. Not because she didn't deserve consequences, but because I didn't want this situation to define the rest of my life or hers. After consulting with my own lawyer, I agreed to a plea deal with specific conditions. Amanda would plead guilty to criminal trespass, complete 100 hours of community service, undergo psychological evaluation, and comply with any recommended treatment, and abide by a no-contact order for 12 months. In exchange, I would not pursue additional charges related to items that may have been disturbed in my apartment. The court appearance was tense. I sat on one side of the courtroom with Michael while my parents flanked Amanda on the other side, their lawyer between them. Amanda looked smaller than I remembered her, usually confident demeanor diminished by the formal setting and serious charges. When asked to make a statement, I kept it brief and factual. I never gave my sister or parents permission to enter my home. The key was copied without my knowledge or consent. When asked to leave by building security, my sister refused, necessitating police involvement. I believe these actions warrant consequences, but I don't wish to see my sister face a felony conviction if it can be avoided through appropriate rehabilitation. Amanda's statement was emotional, and from my perspective, manipulative. Tears streamed down her face as she claimed she just wanted to surprise me and never meant any harm. She portrayed herself as a victim of miscommunication, never acknowledging the fundamental violation of entering someone's home without permission. The judge wasn't entirely swayed by her performance. Miss Wilson, regardless of family relationships, entering someone's residence without their express permission is a serious offense. The fact that you refused to leave when confronted by building security suggests you knew your presence was unauthorized. I am accepting the plea agreement. But let me be clear, violation of any of these terms will result in the original charges being reinstated. As we exited the courtroom, my mother attempted to approach me, but Michael stepped between us. My client has a temporary restraining order against you, Mrs. Wilson. Please maintain the legally required distance. My father's face contorted with rage. You're dead to us, he hissed across the hallway, loud enough for several bystanders to turn and stare. No son of mine would do this to his family. I maintained my composure until I reached my car, where I finally allowed myself to feel the full impact of what had transpired. My family relationships were effectively destroyed. The restraining order I'd obtained against my parents would last 6 months, potentially renewable if their harassment continued. That evening I received an unexpected call from my Aunt Susan, my mother's sister, whom I had always been close to as a child, but had drifted apart from in adulthood. Ralph, I want you to know that not everyone in the family thinks you're wrong, she said without preamble. What Thomas and Marilyn did was inappropriate, and Amanda has been taking advantage of their enabling for years. Her support was a small comfort in the midst of so much familial destruction, but as I surveyed my apartment, now fitted with new locks and an enhanced security system, I couldn't help but feel that something fundamental had been broken beyond repair. The psychological evaluation ordered by the court revealed what I had long suspected: Amanda had significant entitlement issues and showed signs of narcissistic personality traits. The court mandated weekly therapy sessions, which my parents reluctantly agreed to pay for as part of their continued support of her. In a strange way, the legal system had accomplished what years of family discussions could not. It had imposed actual consequences for Amanda's behavior and forced my parents to acknowledge, at least legally, that her actions were wrong. As I tried to move forward from this painful chapter, I found myself both grieving the family relationships I had lost and feeling relief that clear boundaries had finally been established, even if it took the legal system to enforce them. The weeks following the court hearing were eerily quiet. The restraining order prevented my parents from contacting me directly, and Amanda was legally prohibited from coming near my apartment or workplace. This forced distance created a strange vacuum where family drama had once existed. I threw myself into work, grateful for the distraction. My colleagues were tactful enough not to mention the incident with my parents at the office, though I occasionally caught concerned glances when they thought I wasn't looking. My boss called me in for a private meeting to assure me that my position was secure and my handling of the Singapore project had been exemplary, despite the personal challenges. Everyone has family issues, Ralph, he said kindly. What matters is how you handle them, and you've been nothing but professional. His words were reassuring, but I still felt a lingering embarrassment that my private life had spilled so messily into my professional sphere. The first real breach in the silence came from my cousin Jack, who called with news from the extended family front. It's getting ugly, he warned. Uncle Thomas and Aunt Marilyn are telling everyone who listened that you're mentally unstable and power-hungry. They're saying you used your big city lawyer to bully Amanda, and that the whole thing was a misunderstanding that you blew out of proportion. I sighed, unsurprised, but still hurt. Are people believing them? Some are, Jack admitted. Mostly the older generation who think family problems should always stay private, but others are starting to ask questions, especially after what happened at Grandma's birthday dinner. Apparently, my parents had turned my grandmother's 75th birthday celebration into a forum for their grievances against me. The display had been so uncomfortable that even family members who initially sided with them were beginning to question their version of events. Your mom started crying about how her only son had abandoned the family, and your dad kept interrupting to add details about how Ralph always thought he was better than everyone else. It was awkward as hell, especially when Amanda started demanding that everyone contribute to her legal defense fund. Jack paused before adding, "That's when Aunt Susan lost it. She stood up and told everyone about Amanda's credit card fraud charges in Michigan and how your parents have been covering for her for years. She said they enabled Amanda to the point of criminal behavior and that you were right to protect yourself. This family civil war was exactly what I had hoped to avoid, but there was some comfort in knowing that not everyone was accepting my parents' narrative without question." A week later, I received an email from another cousin, Lisa, who had always been close to Amanda. Her message was unexpected. "I know we're not supposed to contact you, but I thought you should know something. Amanda told me she went to your apartment because she needed money. She knew you wouldn't give it to her if she asked, so she planned to borrow some things she could sell. Your parents knew about this plan. They didn't just give her the key to surprise you, or because they were worried. They knew what she intended to do." This confirmation of my worst suspicions hit me hard. Not only had my sister planned to steal from me, but my parents had been complicit in the scheme. The betrayal ran even deeper than I had imagined. I forwarded the email to my lawyer, who advised me to save it as evidence in case I needed to extend the restraining orders, but cautioned against responding directly, since it could violate the no-contact agreement. The family drama soon spilled onto social media, where Amanda posted a tearful video describing how her controlling brother had her arrested for simply visiting his apartment. She carefully omitted any mention of the key being copied without permission, or her refusal to leave when asked by security. My parents shared the video widely, adding their own commentary about how I had always been difficult and turned my back on family. Distant relatives and old high school acquaintances began sending me concerned messages, asking if I was okay and what had really happened. I refused to engage in the public mudslinging. My lawyer advised against making any public statements that could be used against me if Amanda violated her probation, and we ended up back in court. Instead, I simply posted a brief, dignified statement. "I value my privacy and prefer not to discuss family matters publicly. I would appreciate respect for my boundaries during this difficult time." This restraint seemed to frustrate Amanda and my parents even more. Without my participation, their narrative began to lose momentum. People started questioning why I wasn't defending myself if I was truly in the wrong. My friend circle proved invaluable during this time. My closest friends in Seattle rallied around me, providing distraction through hiking trips, game nights, and simply being present when the isolation threatened to overwhelm me. "Family isn't just blood," my friend Nate reminded me over beers one evening. "It's the people who respect your boundaries and have your back when it counts." I started seeing a therapist, Dr. Patricia Chen, who specialized in family trauma. Our weekly sessions helped me process the guilt and grief that surfaced despite my certainty that I had done the right thing. "What you're experiencing is commonly called family of origin trauma," Dr. Chen explained. "The patterns established in your childhood where your boundaries were consistently violated and your sister was enabled at your expense created deep wounds that this incident has reopened." Through therapy, I began to recognize how these childhood dynamics had affected my adult relationships. I tended to attract friends and romantic partners who required excessive emotional labor, while giving little in return, unconsciously recreating the imbalanced relationships I had grown up with. Breaking this cycle requires not just distance from your family of origin, but conscious rewiring of your expectations in relationships, Dr. Chen advised. I implemented practical changes as well. I moved forward with plans to sell my current apartment despite loving the location and view. There were too many negative associations now, and I couldn't shake the feeling of violation when I entered my own home. My new place was in a different neighborhood in a building with even stricter security protocols. I told no one in my family, not even Jack, exactly where I had moved. My mail was routed through a private service, and I became far more cautious about my online presence. These precautions might have seemed extreme to an outsider, but they provided the sense of safety I needed to begin healing. With secure physical boundaries established, I could focus on strengthening my emotional boundaries as well. 6 months after Amanda's arrest, I found myself in a surprisingly better place than I had been before the incident. The forced separation from my family, while painful, had created space for tremendous personal growth. My new apartment, located in a quieter neighborhood with a view of Mount Rainier on clear days, felt truly mine in a way my previous place never had. I had been deliberate in its decoration, choosing items that represented my own tastes rather than what I thought a successful software engineer's apartment should look like. My professional life had flourished despite the personal turmoil. The Singapore project had been a resounding success, resulting in a promotion to lead architecture engineer and a substantial salary increase. My colleagues no longer gave me concerned glances, and the incident with my parents at the office had faded from collective memory. More significantly, I had developed what my therapist called a chosen family of close friends who respected my boundaries and valued my authentic self. We had created our own traditions, including monthly dinner parties, where everyone contributed a dish from their cultural background, weekend hiking excursions, and a book club that often devolved into philosophical discussions that lasted well into the night. Through these friendships, I was learning what healthy relationships actually felt like. There was give and take, respect for differences, and most importantly, no manipulation or guilt tripping when someone needed space or had to say no. Information about my biological family came primarily through Jack, who maintained a careful balance between keeping me informed and respecting my boundaries. He reported that Amanda had complied with her probation requirements, thus far attending therapy sessions and completing community service hours. The therapist seems to be making some headway, Jack told me during one of our monthly phone calls. Amanda actually admitted to me that she shouldn't have gone to your apartment without permission. It wasn't a full acknowledgement of everything, but it's something. My parents had made several attempts to circumvent the restraining order, sending letters through relatives, and once even having a colleague of my father's accidentally run into me at my regular coffee shop. These attempts at contact gradually decreased, as they realized I was serious about maintaining the legal boundaries I had established. 3 months after Amanda's court appearance, they sent a formal letter through their lawyer proposing a family reconciliation meeting with a professional mediator present. The letter included no acknowledgement of wrongdoing or apology for their actions, merely stating that family differences should be resolved within the family. After consulting with both my personal therapist and my lawyer, I declined the invitation through formal legal channels. My response was clear: I would consider re-establishing contact only after receiving a sincere apology that demonstrated understanding of why their actions were inappropriate, and only if they agreed to respect explicit boundaries moving forward. No such apology was forthcoming. Instead, my mother sent a birthday card through Jack that read, "No matter what, you'll always be my son. Family is forever." The sentiment might have seemed touching to an outsider, but to me it was another manipulation tactic, attempting to use family bonds to erase accountability. Perhaps the most unexpected development during this period was my new relationship with Rebecca, a software developer I met at an industry conference. Unlike my previous romantic entanglements, this relationship began with clear communication about expectations and boundaries. On our third date, I took the risk of sharing my family situation, prepared for her to find it too complicated or dramatic. Instead, she listened attentively, and then shared her own experiences with a controlling mother she had limited contact with. "Boundaries aren't rejection," she said, echoing my therapist's words so closely that I nearly spilled my drink in surprise. "They're an act of self-respect, and ultimately an opportunity for healthier relationships." With Rebecca, I experienced for the first time what it felt like to be with someone who didn't view boundary setting as a personal attack or negotiation tactic. When either of us needed space or had to decline an invitation, it was accepted without drama or passive-aggressive comments. As the holiday season approached, I faced the challenge of creating new traditions that didn't involve my family of origin. Rebecca and I decided to host a chosen family Thanksgiving, inviting friends who, for various reasons, weren't spending the holiday with biological relatives. The gathering was chaotic with too many cooks in my kitchen and an eclectic menu that included traditional turkey alongside Filipino pancit, Jewish latkes, and Greek baklava. But it was also filled with genuine laughter and connection free from the tension that had characterized family holidays throughout my childhood. As I looked around at the diverse group of people who had chosen to spend their holiday with me, I realized that I had created something my biological family had never provided: a space where people could be authentically themselves, imperfections, and all without fear of judgment or manipulation. My therapist had been right. The painful rupture with my family of origin had created space for something healthier to grow in its place. I was no longer the dutiful son trying to earn approval or the protective brother enabling destructive behavior. I was simply Ralph, building a life based on mutual respect rather than obligation. The restraining order against my parents expired after 6 months, and I chose not to renew it. Not because I was ready to re-establish contact, but because I no longer feared their intrusion into my life. I had created enough physical and emotional distance that their power over me had significantly diminished. Amanda's no-contact order would remain in effect for another 6 months. But Jack reported that her court-mandated therapy seemed to be having a positive effect. She had maintained steady employment for 4 months, a personal record, and had begun repaying some of her debts. I found myself hoping for her recovery not because I was ready to welcome her back into my life, but because I genuinely wanted her to find healthier ways of navigating the world. Our relationship might never be repaired, but perhaps we could both find peace in our separate journeys. As the 1-year mark of the apartment incident approached, I realized that the anger that had initially fueled my boundary setting had largely dissipated. In its place was a calm certainty about my worth and my right to protect my physical and emotional space. I no longer felt guilt about having my sister arrested. I recognized it as a necessary consequence that might ultimately contribute to her healing as well as mine. The path forward remained uncertain, but for the first time in my life, that uncertainty didn't fill me with anxiety. I had proven to myself that I could weather family rejection and rebuild a meaningful life on my own terms. Whatever came next, I would face it with the confidence of someone who knew his own boundaries and had the courage to enforce them. Today marks exactly 1 year since I received that middle-of-the-night call from building security. 1 year since I made the difficult decision to have my own sister arrested for trespassing in my apartment. 1 year of profound change, painful growth, and unexpected healing. Last week I received a letter from Amanda, her first direct communication since the court hearing. Unlike my parents' attempts at contact, hers came through proper legal channels, first requesting permission through her probation officer to break the no-contact order in writing only. My lawyer reviewed it before passing it along. The letter was unexpectedly thoughtful. "I've been in therapy for 8 months now," she wrote. "At first I was just going through the motions to satisfy the court, but something changed around month 3. I started to see patterns in my behavior that I couldn't unsee. The therapist helped me understand that my sense of entitlement wasn't normal or healthy. I've been using you as a safety net my entire adult life, expecting you to fix my problems while resenting you for having fewer problems to fix." She continued with specific acknowledgments of past behaviors from childhood incidents I had almost forgotten to more recent boundary violations. She made no excuses, simply stated what she had done, and acknowledged the harm it had caused. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," the letter concluded. "I'm not even asking for a relationship right now. I just wanted you to know that I'm doing the work to understand why I did what I did, and I'm truly sorry for violating your home and your trust." I read the letter several times, emotions cycling between skepticism, hope, and a guarded optimism. After consulting with my therapist, I sent a brief response, acknowledging her letter and expressing support for her continued therapeutic journey while maintaining my own boundaries. My parents remain a different story. Their communications, filtered through extended family, continue to focus on my obligation to reconcile rather than their role in the situation. My therapist helped me accept that they may never acknowledge their part in the dynamic or truly respect my boundaries. Some family relationships can't be healed in the way we might hope, Dr. Chen explained during a recent session. You can acknowledge that loss and still move forward with your life. That acceptance has been liberating. I no longer check with Jack about what my parents are saying about me. I no longer rehearse explanations or defenses in my head. I've released the need for their understanding or approval. Instead, I focus on the relationships that bring mutual respect and joy to my life. Rebecca and I recently celebrated 6 months together, a milestone marked by thoughtful conversation rather than extravagant gestures. Our relationship continues to deepen, built on a foundation of honest communication and genuine acceptance. My professional life has expanded in unexpected ways as well. The confidence I gained from enforcing personal boundaries translated into greater assertiveness at work. I successfully pitched a new project that will allow me to lead a team developing accessibility features for our software, something I'm passionate about, but had previously been hesitant to advocate for strongly. The friendships I've cultivated this year have grown into a reliable support network. We celebrate each other's successes, provide comfort during difficulties, and respect each other's limitations without resentment. This chosen family has taught me that genuine connection doesn't require sacrificing your own well-being. If there's one lesson I've learned through this ordeal, it's that boundaries aren't selfish, they're necessary for healthy relationships. Growing up, I was taught that family meant tolerating mistreatment, that love meant having no limits, that loyalty required self-sacrifice. These beliefs left me vulnerable to exploitation and prevented authentic connection. True family, I've discovered, is defined by mutual respect, not merely shared DNA. It's built through consistent acts of consideration and repair when harm occurs. It requires accountability, not just forgiveness. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself and others is to say no and mean it. My sister's arrest was a painful but necessary consequence that has potentially set her on a path to genuine change. Had I continued enabling her behavior out of misplaced family loyalty, I would have contributed to her ongoing issues rather than her growth. The legal system, while imperfect, provided structure and consequences that years of family discussions could not. Sometimes external intervention is necessary when internal family dynamics have become too dysfunctional to self-correct. For those of you watching who may be struggling with toxic family relationships, I want you to know that it's okay to protect yourself. It's okay to establish and enforce boundaries, even when others label you selfish for doing so. Your well-being matters. Your home is your sanctuary. Your boundaries deserve respect. The path I've taken isn't for everyone. Involving law enforcement in family matters is a serious step that should not be taken lightly. But sometimes, when other avenues have been exhausted, it becomes necessary to protect yourself through legal means. What would you have done in my situation? Would you have pressed charges against a family member who violated your boundaries so significantly? Have you ever had to make the difficult choice between family loyalty and self-protection? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. If you found value in my story, please like this video and subscribe to the channel for more real-life experiences and lessons learned the hard way. Remember that establishing boundaries isn't about punishing others. It's about caring enough for yourself to create the conditions necessary for your well-being. Sometimes the hardest choices lead to the most important growth. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it helps someone out there feel less alone in their own family struggles. Take care of yourselves and remember, family should be defined by respect and care, not just shared blood.